Okay, so session 2 of our apprentice training out of our 4 sessions. Let's do a quick recap of what we covered last time. See how good your memory is. All right, so there were, and remember, I start from the top down. Like, I want you to get the big picture first. My way of thinking about this sport, my way of approaching it as not only an official, but as someone who has to train people to officiate is, I want people to understand the sport. If you understand the sport, you don't need to be told a billion specific things. You'll know how to interpret what you see, and you'll understand why the rules are the way they are. If you don't understand the nature of something, then it starts to become a matter of memorization and recall, and there isn't everything written in the rule book or in the case manual. So there's lots of white space there in terms of what you're going to experience, and if it's just a matter of memorizing stuff, that's going to fail you in critical moments, okay? So I start with the big picture, understanding, and then I focus on certain key definitions and how we apply those definitions. Because if you understand those key definitions and how to apply them, then you're going to get a lot of calls right, and you're not going to miss some of the things that people can commonly miss. And some of those misses can be very consequential to a wrestler or to a team, okay? So just a couple of quick things in review. There were 4 roles of the official I mentioned. Can you remember what some of them were? What are 4 things that, when we think about an official, what are we? We administer the match. That's sort of the most important one, right? Like that's our main. It's sort of like a judge sitting on the bench. He's going to adjudicate or rule on a case, right? So that's one thing. We administer the contest. What are a couple of other things, if you can remember?
Stewards.
We are stewards of the sport, yeah. Yeah, so we're here because we love the sport. If it was just about the money, and sometimes I get guys that call me, and I can tell the ones that just trying to do it for the money. And that's okay. I don't mind if guys want to just make money, but that sort of shines through on certain guys. You can tell they don't love the sport. They officiate wrestling, they officiate softball, they officiate soccer. They're just making money. And if they're competent, I can be okay with that. But whether you love the sport or not, we're stewards of it. We're part of passing the sport on to others. There's 2 others. You remember what they are?
Role models.
Role model, yeah. And we're very visible out on that mat, and so everybody knows who we are, and they have high expectations for us as officials. So we have to be aware of that. And then the last one, sort of in line with, so the role model and the steward are kind of in line with each other. There's another one sort of in line with being the administrator. Final decision maker. All judgments and rulings. Yeah, that's us. And that's what Rule 3 tells us, actually. So, good. And then there was, we talked about the publications. What is the nomenclature, the standard, if I'm referring to a rule? How do I refer to it by? 7-1-1. So it's the rule number 7. It's the section 1, the article 1, and then it can go as low as 1A or 1A1. So rule 6-6, which defines, I think, the overtime procedures. Will 6-6 will get into like A1 or whatever. Like there's, it'll go pretty low level of detail. Okay, and then how about for the case manual? What's the convention there? When we refer to a situation in the case manual, so 7-1-1 was a rule. If I wanted to find some case in the case manual that deals with rule 7-1-1, what would I be looking for?
7-1-1.
Not -1-1.
Oh,
.1, yeah. So same thing, but again, very helpful. The 2 publications work hand in hand with each other, and that just makes it very easy. So you understand that nomenclature. Great. You want to go look up a case that has to do with 7-1-1, go into the case manual and then try to find, under rule 7 of the case manual, look under 7.1.1 and see what you can find. Not that every rule has a case behind it, but a lot of them do. Okay. And then there were 5 principles for officiating wrestling that I shared with you toward the end of our session. You remember what some of those are? All right, one has to do with this. Got to see it to call it. Yeah, can't make those calls unless you see it. Even though sometimes you know that guy's locking hands, or you know he was pulling back one finger, you just couldn't see it. You don't see it, you can't call it. Okay, that's one. What should be our attitude out there? Positive, but what do we think of the umpire who goes strike versus the one that goes steer? Yeah, it's not about
we
you.
shouldn't be.
We're not
seeing.
Yeah, we're not the show. Just like the referee's manual will tell you in the back of the case manual, the referee's manual will literally, it says the good official sees everything and is seldom noticed. So again, we're not the show, but we should be making these rulings, and we don't have to be all flamboyant, make double flips to make a pin call and slap the mat and stuff. Because if we're doing that, we're drawing attention away from the competitors. We probably ought not do that. And we're just sort of, for maybe the wrong reasons, calling attention to ourselves. So, not that officials can't have some personality. I'm not going to say you don't have to be a total robot, but we just have to be careful about that, okay? What about if you make a mistake out there? What's the principle here? Correct it. What if it means people are going to go, oh my gosh, you made a mistake?
Better to get it right.
Better to get it right, yeah. That's the whole principle behind video replay in all these sports, right? You know what? We don't think that you're trying to mess it up, but you might have not called it right, or you might have not seen something, and so we just want to get the call right. So that's what we want to do. We don't have the luxury of video replay in our sport or at this level. They do at the NCAA level, but not at this level. So yeah. So if we make the mistake, we go ahead and we try to correct it. We don't go, oh, I shouldn't have given that guy the 2. And just think to yourself about that, oh, that poor guy, and then the guy wins by a point. So we should go, I shouldn't have given it. You know what? No takedown, no takedown, no takedown, still neutral.
Are we able to consult a rule book, or is that considered such bad form?
So to be honest with you, you may. It's not very good form, but if it's for getting it right, do it. If it's that important. The reason you don't want to do it right is because it'll call into question your credibility. So if we had to look it up and it was like, oh, okay, his foot is supposed to be touching the line on the neutral starting position, like, yeah, that's pretty basic. That's like not knowing there's 4 downs in football or something, right? So we don't want to do it for something like that. But
match criteria, maybe?
Yes, I do that. I had a tie in a middle school dual meet 2 years ago. I don't have all those things memorized. I kind of know that the hierarchy is like if you had unsportsmanlike conducts or something, that conduct stuff is sort of at the top, and then it's sort of like who had the most like 6-point wins and stuff like that. But I don't know. So when it happened, it's like, okay, I'm pulling out the rule book and let's just look in Rule 6 and let's find the criteria and figure out what's what here. So yeah, very rare to do it. One time I remember I was doing the Kinko tournament. This is about, 12, 13 years ago. And there's a tight team race going on. Bothell was trying to win the team title. And Bothell kid is wrestling an Inglemore kid. And match ends, shake hands, they go over. The one Inglemore kid, or the Bothell kid, he hasn't stepped off the mat yet. He starts dropping his strap, and the coach's like, no. and it's like right in front of me, right? And it's like, and he puts it back up. It's like, no, so that's unsportsmanlike conduct. That's -1 team point. It's like, oh, he didn't drop them both. And I was like, oh. He's like, what does the rule say? Yeah, it's like, wait a second, let me look that up. And sure enough, because in my memory, I couldn't remember. It's like, if he drops his straps, or what does the rule say exactly? So I go back into Rule 7, where the violations are. And sure enough, it's, failure to keep straps up is the way it's written. Meaning both. So it wasn't, if you drop them both, it's like they have to be up when you're on the mat. So since he dropped one of them, they were not both up. So that was this unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, -1 team point. But that's an example where, okay, on the spot, you know what, let's look that up. Because you need this team point, you don't want to lose it, I get it, and I don't want to screw that up. So yeah, let's make the correction if we can. And then one of the things, and this is in the NFHS publications, there is a code of conduct for or code of ethics for the officials and for the coaches. And part of what it says in here has to do with, the fact that in our rule, what should we, when it comes to the rules themselves, who should know the rules best in a wrestling meet or a tournament? Yeah, an irate parent whose kid just lost, right? Who should know the rules best? The official should. And what the Code of Ethics will tell you in the NFHS publications is they actually use the term that we should master the contest rules. It actually has that expectation on the coaches as well. So this is one reason, like, technically the way the sport is laid out, this is why we shouldn't be having like all these sort of conferences with coaches where we're revealing to them, why that's a reversal or why that's a near fall, because they are expected by the NFHS to master the contest rules also. How can they coach their kids or be a check against us and our competency if they don't know the rules? Okay, so that's another principle. We need to know those rules and apply them consistently. Just like the umpire, if it's going to be a strike and it's this far off the plate, it better be that way for both teams. Now, you better not quote me the rule and say, well, the rule is that something less than 6 inches off the plate is a strike. No, that's not what the rule says. The rule says it's got to be above the plate. Now, if you want to tell me that you thought it was out here and that's above the plate, that's one thing. And if you believe that, or that's what you quote see, it better be the same for my team as it is for theirs. So if we're going to be calling the ball that's this far off the plate a strike, don't tell me, number one, that it can be off the plate and be a strike, because that's wrong. You're not mastering the contest rules. But if you're saying it's over the plate, it's like, okay, fine. When my guy made that same pitch, you didn't call a strike. So we got to know the rules and we got to apply them consistently, okay? And then the last rule has to do, or the last principle, if you don't know any better, what should you use? You can't remember the exact rule, or you're not quite sure there is a rule. What's that? Judgment. Common sense. Yeah. Discretion. Again, the bus is late. There's nobody here for weigh-in yet. The home team's here. Hey, it's Seattle. The bridge is blocked. It's raining and it's dark. We're going to use common sense and judgment. And Rule 3-1-12 actually gives us some of that leeway. By rule, we are to meet in the spirit of sportsmanship unexpected events. So their bus broke down. That wasn't expected. Maybe it's not as excusable if they know that the weigh-in is supposed to be at 5 and the guy comes rolling in at 6 and goes, oh, I had no idea what time weigh-in was. I didn't even look at my schedule. Well, that was preventable. Your bus breaking down, yeah, I get it. We couldn't prevent that, okay? All right, so there's a recap of what we did last time. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to start our building blocks. And do you remember what our 3 building blocks of wrestling? Supporting points. Concept of control, yep. Inbounds, out of bounds, great. Those are the 3, all right? So we're going to start by talking about supporting points, all right? And for those of you who've been through the training, this is going to be just refresher, but I'm just telling you, having been around this sport for 40 years, and I still run into plenty of our colleagues that don't really understand this concept very well. And so it leads to a lot of inconsistency in how they rule on things, right? So let's take our rule book, and I want you to turn to Rule 5-15, which is the rule on inbounds.
Control, inbounds, and what was the third?
Supporting points. Inbounds, out of bounds, supporting points. So they're all sort of linked together, actually, and you'll see that as we go through this. So Rule 5-15 Okay. Now, Kim, tell me what 5-15-2 tells us. Okay, so let's break that down. So supporting points, they're the parts of the body that bear the weight. So if I always sort of give this sort of extreme example here. So right now, this is an extreme. How many supporting points do I have right here? 4. Actually, I have more than that. 6. What are they, Kale? Yeah, 6. They're all bearing some weight. This isn't bearing very much back here, but it's bearing some. How about now? How many supporting points do I have potentially?
1.
Could be 1, maybe you can say that, but
I'd say probably 6.
there could be like 11, I think. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or whatever. Like, so that's sort of extreme, but those parts of my body are bearing weight. Now, the thing is, when we talk about supporting points, this isn't written explicitly in this rule. And if I could rewrite the rule book, I would rewrite the rule to define supporting points much better than they are currently defined, okay? Because what they don't tell you is this. Supporting points, first thing is that the NFHS doesn't care about more than 2 supporting points. So when I'm in this position and I have 6 of them, we don't care about actually these 2 and these 2 as much as we do these 2, okay? Because otherwise, if this was the out of bounds line, and that's out of bounds and this is in bounds, and we would say, well, his hands are out of bounds, yeah, which is true. Is the rest of them out of bounds? Well, we'll talk about this in just a moment, but, no, I'm not, because actually the 2 supporting points we care about are my knees. That's why we wouldn't call this out of bounds, because these 2 don't really bear the majority of my weight. So we care about 2 max, okay? We don't care about 6 or 10, care about 2 maximum. And supporting points, even though it doesn't say this explicitly in the rule you just read, they really are the points that support the majority of the weight, okay? And the reason that we know this is because in the rule on takedown, it actually will describe to you the fact that, well, read the list of supporting points that it lists there.
When down on the mat, the usual points of support are the knees, the side of the thigh, the buttock, the hands, and the head.
Okay, so the buttocks, the side of the thigh. The reason I say they bear the majority of the weight is because what I want you to pay attention to when we talk supporting points is the concept of like center of gravity, your mass, your body mass, okay? So we obviously, when I'm sitting here like this on the side of my thigh, where's the heaviest part of my body? Yeah, it's your thighs, your butt, right? This is like your center of gravity because these are your heaviest muscles and bones and stuff, right? So on the side of my thigh, most of my weight's there. When I'm on my butt, most of it's there, right? When would most of my weight be on my head or my hands? In the bridge, or the guy is doing what to me? Stack or something, or wheelbarrow, right? This guy takes my feet up in the air like this, right? So now the rule on takedown, so that's the list of the usual supporting points when we're down on the mat. It's really sort of the all-inclusive list, because it's hard for any other parts of the body to ever bear the majority of your weight. And again, we don't really care about parts of the body that are not truly bearing your weight or aren't bearing a significant portion of it. Now, in the rule on takedown, what it will tell you is the hands are considered supporting points when they bear the majority of the weight. So what does that tell me? That's why when I'm in this position, what are my supporting points considered? What are my primary supporting points? The 2 that matter, the knees, because they bear the majority of my weight. I don't even have to have these on the mat, actually. Okay, I couldn't remove these without a lot of, magic. But what that rule on takedown is telling us is my hands would be considered my supporting points when the majority of my weight is supported by them, which would happen when guy gets me up in a wheelbarrow, right? So that's why by inference we know that your supporting points really are bearing the majority of your weight. Okay.
Isn't a wheelbarrow a takedown?
Well, it could be I'm the defensive wrestler, you're the offensive wrestler, and you, for whatever reason, lifted my legs up in the air or something. Yeah. So generally it'll happen during a takedown, but it could happen at any time while you're just wrestling down on a mat, for instance. Okay, so again, key things, we have a list there of those supporting points. Even though the NFHS doesn't say this explicitly, I want to say it explicitly, and I would rewrite the rule to say this. There are a maximum of 2 points we care about, okay? And I say max of 2, we'll cover this in a second. They support the majority of your weight. We know this because the rule on takedown tells us, hey, your hands don't count as a supporting point unless they bear the majority of the weight. Okay, good, that's our clue right there, right? Okay, now, continuing on with this in Rule 5-15, okay? So, what does Article 2B tell us?
Possibility of the offensive wrestler bringing the opponent back into the inbound area. In this situation, any part of the defensive wrestler's shoulder or scapula is considered to be all of the supporting points.
Okay, so let's illustrate, and again, this will be sort of provocative, right? When I'm in this position here, where is the majority of my weight being supported? Well, so that's a different question in terms of what are my supporting points. Where do you think the majority of my weight is being supported right now? But yeah, this is the heaviest part of my body, right? Might be different if I was up like that, but this is where the majority of the weight. But that rule tells us what? What are my supporting points in this case? Shoulders and scapula when I'm, quote, on my back. Now, this is another place where the rule could be improved greatly, which, what does on the back mean? I would use the term in near fall criteria to make it very clear, because is this on the back? Is this? Is this? Is this versus this? So using the term, quote, on the back is too nebulous for my taste, but what I would tell you is that the rule is telling us, though, when they're on the back, then the two supporting points we care about, the shoulders. And the shoulders, by the rule and by the picture in the back of the rule book, so I don't remember what page it's on, but the pictures back here which illustrate, again, what 4 different rules, they give you an illustration. This picture number 5 on page 63 shows you what the pinning area is, or what the, quote, shoulders are. The shoulders would go from the top of the shoulder down to the bottom tip of the scapula, shoulder blade, okay? So that whole area there is, quote, the shoulder. So you got a sort of a pretty broad target there, but when we're, quote, on the back, and I want you to substitute on the back with the term in near fall criteria, then the shoulders become the supporting points, even though the bulk of our weight's probably being supported by our butt or a hip or something, right? Okay, so we have a list of usual supporting points down on the mat. We have now included what happens, how we would consider the shoulders to be a part of, or the two supporting points. So we have a list of when we're down on the mat. When are we not down on the mat? In neutral position. How do I know when we're not down on the mat, Kale? Yes. And when are the supporting points the feet? Give me a bit more of a description or definition of that. Yes, when 100% of my weight is on my feet. So in this position here, 100% of my weight is on my feet. How about in this position here? No, because if at this moment, if you take these hands away, I'm going to face plant, right? How about here? Exactly. So get back to the concept of really what a supporting point is. This hand is touching the mat. That is true. Technically, it is maybe there is less than 100% of my weight supported by my feet, because the mere touching of the mat means there's some amount of force potentially being applied, and so out of my 170-pound body, a few ounces might be sort of supported by that finger. But for all intents and purposes, we're rounding up to 100%. When it's just brushing the mat, it's not supporting the weight at all, then we would consider the feet to be the supporting points at that point. So why would we want to know that someone is, quote, down on the mat? When do we need to know and use that? What rules or what situations is it consequential to be, quote, down on the mat? A takedown, yes, because not for an escape, but for a takedown, because in the definition of a takedown, it talks about gaining control down on the mat. So if you're gaining control of me, but I am not down on the mat because I'm on my feet, 100% of my weight is supported by my feet, you can get control, but you won't have a takedown yet. Okay, so that's one takedown. What's another reason why we would want to be aware of when someone is, quote, down on the mat? No, not necessarily.
On the edge of the mat, going out of bounds.
No. Think about a violation. Locking hands. Offensive wrestler is not allowed to lock hands on a defensive wrestler who is down on the mat. So if somebody's I'm the defensive wrestler and I'm in this position, starting position, and I start to stand up and this guy locks hands around me, what are my supporting points at this point? My knee, basically, yeah, and this leg here. So I'm not 100% supported by my feet, therefore I am down on the mat right here. We're locking hands. If I tripod up and he locks hands here, how about that? And how come you'd say locking hands here? Yeah, it's not 100% on my feet. Okay, so that's another reason why we're trying to consider down on mat. Takedown and technical violation for locking hands by the offensive wrestler while his opponent is down on the mat. Okay, so that's the times that matters. And in Rule 5-15-2, they're telling us here are the times when you're considered your supporting points are down on the mat. When you're down on the mat, these are your supporting points. So the converse is what tells us, well, when it's none of those, and the only time it's really none of those is when all of your weight is supported by your feet. Okay. All right. So that's supporting points. All right. Now, so now we know what supporting points are. Let's talk about inbounds and out of bounds. So Rule 5-15, Brad is telling us, what does the Article 1 say? So 5-15-1, what does that say?
Contestants are considered to be in bounds if all the supporting points of either wrestler are inside or on the boundary lines.
Okay, so breaking that down, okay? It's considered to be in bounds. Let's not talk about the wrestler or anything else, just the concept of what is in bounds. In bounds is anything that's either inside of the lines or on the line. So let's say this big, this is the land of the giants. This is a line on the map, and I'm a tiny insect. So if the out of bounds is over there and the center of the map is this way, and here's the line, well, when I'm inside the line, that's easy. This is the old rule, was you have to be inside of here. Now the way the rule is structured, you can be on the line. So is this hand out of bounds? Is this hand out of bounds? Well, there's the other outer edge. So so this is sort of the line. Is my hand out of bounds yet? About there? Now, how about there? Okay, so the moment a body part has crossed beyond the outer edge of the line, that's when that part is out of bounds. Okay, so I want you to just be clear about the concept of what part of the mat, what geography is considered out of bounds first. So let's be clear about that. It's a separate matter to say a wrestler is out of bounds. Okay, so first thing is that out of bounds would be anything that is beyond the outer edge of the boundary line. So the moment, if this is the boundary line and the out of bounds here, center of mat here, the instant this body part is just a little tiny touch just beyond the line, this body part is now out of bounds. It's touching the out of bounds. It's a separate matter to ask, is that my supporting point or not? But that body part is touching out of bounds. So, now it gets clearer once they get well beyond the boundary. But once it's close, and we have to just be paying attention as to what point is it touching beyond that outer edge of the line, okay? And so Rule 5-15-1 says, again, read it again.
Contestants are considered to be in bounds if all the supporting points of either wrestler are inside or on the boundary line.
Okay, so we know what the out of bounds part is. It's anything beyond that outer edge of the line. But this is telling us if the supporting points of the wrestler are inside or on the line, okay? So now we're going to bring those two things together. We know what supporting points are, and we know what constitutes the out of bounds. So now we can put those two together to determine, is a wrestler out of bounds? Because once we can determine whether an individual wrestler is out of bounds, then there's another level of, is the situation out of bounds? Should we stop the match or out of bounds, or do we wrestle on? Okay, so as long as the supporting points of either wrestler, it says both supporting, or it doesn't say both, it just says, read it again.
Contestants are considered to be in bounds if all the supporting points of either wrestler are inside or on the boundary.
Okay, so this is why, how many supporting points maximum do we care about? 2. So again, going back to our example, I'm on my hands and feet, and I have 6 supporting points. That's why we're not going to say, oh, when I'm on my hands and my feet, and if this is the outer edge and this is out of bounds out here, that when I'm on my hands and knees or whatever, that I'm not out of bounds because these aren't my supporting points. They are technically supporting points. They aren't the supporting points, the 2 that we care about. So that rule is telling us we have to be careful that someone doesn't get confused and go, oh, all supporting points. Oh, well, when you're on your hands and knees and then one of those fingers slides, now that supporting point's out. Technically, correct. But this is why the rule should be rewritten. That is not one of the 2 supporting points maximum we care about. So, Tim, come on over here for a second. So, maximum of 2 supporting points we care about. So, when Tim and I are like this, what are our supporting points? Okay. Now, come on closer to me. So, boom. What are our supporting points? How many supporting points do I have? How many does he have? 1. All right. How about now? How many supporting points does he have? 0. How come?
He's being supported by you.
Yeah, so he has
His 2 are yours.
none of his weight is supported by his own body parts, number 1. Number 2, like Tim read to us in Rule 5-15-2, it doesn't include the parts of the body used to hold the other person. Okay, so if you get down on the mat there, on all fours, for a second, and I'm like this, what are my supporting points? Yeah, I really, in a sense, don't have any, because my weight's being supported by him. I'm holding on to him this way. Maybe if I'm in a crab ride or something, right? Like, I technically don't even have a supporting point here. What are his? Knees, because that's the majority of his weight is supported there. So, that's an illustration. When the part of the body that I'm using to hold him, even though I have 170 pounds on his back, I had no supporting points. And again, maximum of 2 supporting points. We could have 2, we could have 1, we could have none. If somehow we got into this position, he's lifted my single leg and I've lifted his. We each have 1. Okay, so we have to be aware of what the supporting points are and know how to identify them. Because when it comes to inbounds, now we're looking, where are those supporting points at? So if we want to do this, stay there for a second, I'm going to point the camera. So let's say that the piece of paper here is the boundary line, okay? Let's see if I can see that on the, okay, that piece of paper is the boundary line right there. And let's say Tim's on the out of bounds edge, outer edge. So come on in here for a second. So when we're here, are we in or out?
Yeah.
Is anybody standing or touching the out of bounds at the moment? No. Okay. So slide your right foot back just a little bit. Okay. How about there? Do we have any supporting points out right now? His right foot. Okay. And why is his right foot considered out of bounds? Beyond the line, touching the mat beyond the line. Okay. Is he out of bounds?
Yes.
Yes. Correct. So he has to have, quote, all of them, right? And he has how many supporting points right now? He has 2. And are all of them in bounds? No. So by the rule that Brad just read, 5-15-1, he doesn't have all supporting points in at the moment. So he is considered out of bounds. How about me? Okay. Now step back with your other foot. Okay. How about here? What do we got going on? In bounds. But Tim, how many supporting points does Tim have in? None. How about me?
Yes, both.
By rule, what are we? Inbounds or out of bounds? How come we're in bounds? Yes, all of mine are inbounds. Okay, so then if I do this, tweet, how come? Yeah, no, or let's state it another way, no one has all of their supporting points inbounds at the moment. Because now my toe just crossed beyond the outer edge of the boundary line and it's touching the mat out there. He has both of his supporting points touching beyond the boundary line. Now we are out of bounds. Now, how about if Tim, step forward with your right foot for a moment? How about here? Okay, how come we're out of bounds at this moment? There you go. Neither wrestler has all their supporting points in bounds. Okay. How about if Tim lifts up this leg and gets a nice sweet single on me?
That's in bounds.
Apply your rule. What does your rule tell you? I have 1 supporting point. It's that foot, and it's in bounds.
Yeah.
He has 2. One of them's out, so he's not in bounds. He's got my leg lifted. It doesn't count as a supporting point for me, the parts of the body that are sort of holding him or him holding me kind of thing, right? So I have 1. It's this right foot. It is in bounds. Wrestling continues here. Step back with your right foot. Boom. How about now? Still in because of who? Because of me. I'm still in. I still have my 1 supporting point in. If I hop up in the air to do some sort of goofy thing to him, I'm out the instant my foot comes off the mat. Because in that moment, does anyone have all their supporting points in? No, because how many supporting points does he have? And where are they? And how many do I have? 0. So neither wrestler has all of their supporting points in bounds anymore. Okay. Now, there's a companion rule to this, which is the out of bounds rule. So rule 5 dash, what is that? I don't remember off the top of my head. Oh, 5-18. So read 5-18, Kale. Yeah. So in that case, when he has in our example, he had a foot beyond the boundary line, right? So step 1 in and the other's out. He had a foot beyond the boundary line. And as soon as I had 1 beyond the boundary line, we both have 1 out of bounds. Okay. So, and the reason we need to use both these rules in conjunction with each other is because when we get into this situation where, boom, I've lifted him, he has none, and I do this, and you just did what, Cale? You blew the whistle because why? I thought each of us had to have a supporting point out of bounds to be out of bounds by Rule 5-18. Yes, so by Rule 5-15, see, in that situation we just went through, 5-18 is insufficient. He didn't have a supporting point out of bounds. He didn't have any supporting points, but I had one out. He didn't have one out. Rule 5-18 doesn't say he's out of bounds, but Rule 5-15 does, because neither of us was, all supporting points in bounds. So, inbounds, out of bounds, those two rules, they work in conjunction with each other, okay? But they are dependent upon, first and foremost, we have to know what are the supporting points of a wrestler and what constitutes inbounds versus out of bounds. And we are constantly evaluating, constantly, as we officiate, whether you're doing it consciously or not, where the supporting points are for wrestlers. We need to be doing that. When I'm watching wrestling action, whether I am conscious of it or not, I'm always aware he's on his knees, he's on one knee, he's up on his feet, whatever. He has no supporting points. That guy's lifting him. Like, I'm aware of that. And then I'm also constantly evaluating, are we inbounds or out of bounds? Now, it's very easy when we're in the center of the mat. We're so far from the boundary line. If I pick him up, there's no consideration of inbounds, out of bounds. We're, literally like 15 feet away from the out of bounds at that moment. But when we start to get near the edge, now being aware of what are the supporting points of each wrestler, boundary line, now we can apply supporting points and inbounds, out of bounds rules together and make that determination. And we're making it constantly. When you're choosing not to blow the whistle, that's because you've determined, I see the supporting points and they're all inbounds, or at least for one wrestler, they're all inbounds, okay? So that's why those two rules are fundamental. Well, do we stop action or let action go? That's all dependent upon making the determination of what are the supporting points and are they inside or on the boundary line or not, okay? So that's basics there, okay? So now, any questions about that? And I want you to keep in mind, learn what these rules say. The more you learn to remember the terms in there, this helps you a lot for a couple of reasons. Number one, the more we are sort of conversant with and able to speak the terms that as they are written in the rule book, the less likely we are to vary from them and get it wrong, okay? Secondly, it will help you in your discussions with coaches or fellow officials sometimes who want to challenge your call when you start using rule-based language, not, referee speak. Well, he barely lifted him for just a fraction of a second. Like, okay, I don't know about that. I don't care. At that moment, he had no supporting points. But it was only for that the rule book doesn't say anything about a fraction of a second. It just says that someone has to have all their supporting points in bounds, and no one did. But he put him right back in. That's not what it says in the rule book. Okay, so the more you can quote the rule itself, the less likely you are to run into resistance from people, especially coaches. And for you younger or less experienced guys, this comes in handy. The reason I'm known as by the book is because I memorize this stuff as best as possible. And I use those terms when I speak to coaches. I don't confuse them with a bunch of other stuff and confuse myself. Okay, so that's why I emphasize know these definitions and learn to apply them, okay?
There's a definition
For holding?
Yeah.
Oh, no, there is not a definition for the term holding.
Okay. So it could be holding up or it could be restraining.
Yeah, or maybe laying on top of like I was, right? Like I wasn't wrapped around him necessarily, I'm on top of him. So it just, some terms are just not completely defined in the book. But that's why, you want to use the terms that are in the book, because when you're making a ruling and you're trying to explain a ruling to someone, and you're using terms from out of the book, then it may be that your judgment is different than mine. Your idea of what constitutes holding could be different than mine, but I won't find fault in the fact that he said, but it doesn't, the parts of the body where he's holding his opponent don't count as supporting points, Bob. And I'll say, but that's not really holding when he's just laying on his leg like that. And no, that to me is holding. It's like, all right, I can't argue that. You're quoting the rule correctly. Whether I agree that, that was holding, that's different. Go back to the example of the baseball umpire who, if the ball's this far off the plate, he calls a strike, but he's telling me, no, that was right over the black of the plate, right? Like, it was, no, it was this far off. No, it was right over the black. And all the ball has to do is, the black, if this is the black and here's the center of the plate, and any part of it means the ball is over the plate, as long even a little fraction of it. That's why that was a strike, because it was over the black. It wasn't over the black. That's a judgment. But he's right. Okay, fine. It'd be different if he was calling this a strike, right? That's sort of like, for us, if the near fall is when one shoulder is down, the other is within 45 degrees, it's one thing to say, I think it's 44, Cale thinks it's 46 degrees. I'm counting near fall, he's not. We're both right. Because we don't have a protractor. We can't measure with certainty, but it'd be quite different if we're up at this. This is nowhere near 45, and if Cale's trying to claim that that's less than 45 degrees, we have good reason to sort of, say, okay, your judgment is like so far off. Just like this ball was nowhere near the black of the plate. The guy had to jump 3 feet out of the box to avoid getting hit by the pitch, right? That wasn't over the plate. Okay? So know the words in the rule book, and then you'll stay out of trouble when you sort of talk about your rulings. Okay. Now, so let's take our third building block now, concept of control. And for this, we're going to watch a couple of videos, okay? So let me pause this.